our goal. Valerie, Jarrett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Marnie. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So I think we've all had the 24 hours to really let the inauguration and the message from yesterday settle in. I'm curious what moment resonated most with you.
Oh my gosh, so many moments. When the soon-to-be sworn-in president and first lady walked out onto the stage, it became real. Watching Justice Sotomayor give the oath of office to now Vice President Harris, and just the historic symbolism of that. Listening to President Biden's speech where he reached out so broadly across America and appealed to our better angels. And then later in the evening, I was so struck by former presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama make direct appeals to the American people to come together, to heal, and to work together, and to find that we really are our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. The whole day was really one of unity, of bringing America together. A good start. Even the artists were bipartisan.
A lot of goosebump moments, and you said personally, witnessing that ceremony with those that you care about stood out to you.
Yeah, I watched this ceremony with my daughter, my son, 18-month-old grandson, and my grandson is both Black and Indian. And so representation matters, and I love that he will grow up in a world thinking it's perfectly normal for the second most powerful person in the country to be someone who looks just like him. And to see a woman in that role is consistent with the way that his parents are trying to raise him. But as I said, role models matter and representation matters. And so on a very personal note, it was important to us.
President Biden's message was one of unity yesterday, and a promise that we often heard on the campaign trail, which was, I will work just as hard for those who voted for me as for those who voted against me. It's going to take some time, I think, for those who didn't vote for Joe Biden to be president to jump on board, but that's not to say that it's not possible. But what challenges does he face in trying to deliver on that promise?
Look, we have a very divided country. We saw for the first time in our history an angry mob storm the Capitol, a deadly mob, and attempt to overthrow the smooth and orderly transition of power, and try to interrupt Congress from certifying the president, duly elected president of the United States. The anger that led up to that didn't happen overnight. It was catalyzed, I believe, by remarks from the president earlier in the day, but it's been building up for a while now. And so, yes, it will take a while to diffuse it and to heal the wounds, and to have the 70+ million people who voted for President Trump recognize that they now have a president who still represents their interests and who wakes up every single day thinking about them. And I think what President Biden knows is that actions speak louder than words, but words matter too. And the tone that he will set at the top, the ambitious agenda that he intends to move forward in swift action will demonstrate to people all across our country who are suffering from the ravages of the COVID-19 virus, who have either their health has been in jeopardy, their loved ones have been ill, or are a part of the 400,000 plus who have died. Or they've lost their job, or they have far fewer resources available to them. Their children are not in school, whether they're in preschool or in college, that's been disrupted. So knowing that the president is focusing on it, and as recently as earlier today announced steps he intends to take to remedy this situation, all of that will go towards building the important credibility that he's willing to earn. And I think that's another one of the traits that I learned about President Biden when he was vice president, and I had the privilege of working with him in the White House, is that he is honest. He is true to his word. He's indefatigable. He never gives up. And I think having a president who's willing to do that on our behalf, on all of our behalf, will resonate over time.
I'm curious your thoughts. I spoke just a few moments ago with Anita McBride. She was an advisor under the Bush administration, also served under the Reagan administration and George H.W. Bush. And she suggested that Joe Biden welcome Republicans to the White House, to his house, in the early days of his administration. What do you think of that idea?
Well, look, he began already by inviting the leaders on both sides of the aisle to worship with him in church before the ceremony. made it clear in advance of the ceremony that even if President Trump opted out of attending, that Vice President Pence was more than welcomed. In fact, I think he went so far as to say he'd be honored to have him there. So I am sure that he will invite them to the White House and has had and will continue to have an open dialogue with people on both sides of the aisle. I know Anita well, she's terrific. And she's a believer that people, when they come together and they listen to one another, they find things in common. And even though we work for presidents on opposite sides of the aisle, we developed a friendship. And I know that President Biden understands that. He has relationships in the Senate that go back decades. He built trust with them. And I think this is a new opportunity to show the country and, in fact, the world what America is capable of doing. I think these last 4 years, so many Americans have been scratching their head, and certainly around the globe, people have wondered what happened to the United States. And this is the moment, I am confident, where President Biden, working in partnership with Vice President Harris, are prepared to change that paradigm.
They do have a big job ahead of them, but they can't do it alone. I want to get your thoughts on Congress right now. And in terms of civility and compromise, what role do leaders on both sides of the aisle in Congress play, the Pelosi's, the Mitchells, to encourage new perspectives and voices and some of the youth that we're seeing now in both chambers to have a voice?
Well, look, as a pragmatic analysis, the numbers are tight in both the House and the Senate. Senate couldn't be any tighter. It's 50-50. House is close. And so both the leaders in the House and the Senate are going to have to work with the entire House and Senate, not just their own party and not just some members of their own party. I mean, within the Democratic Party, we've got a big tent. That's part of the strength, I think, of the Democratic Party. But that means you got to roll up your sleeves and listen to people. And I think it's incumbent upon the members to realize that we have this short opportunity to address this crisis. No one member is going to get 100% of what they want, and that there is no shame in compromise. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Move forward, come back to fight another day, move forward again. And the Senate and the House are going to have to multitask. It's what we all do in our lives. What working person out there isn't multitasking? And so having an agenda and being able to move forward on multiple fronts, given the magnitude of the crises that we have, both in terms of the health and the economy and our stature around the world, we have racial unrest that has to be reckoned with. We have a global crisis when it comes to climate change. These are big challenges that lie ahead. It takes serious people who are willing to put their short-term political interests to the side and work on behalf of the American people.
Are you optimistic that that can happen? I think just using the COVID relief over the last 8 months as an example of compromise was really hard to come by. What are your hopes that we can change that moving forward?
Well, I would say this. It's up to us, all of us, to encourage those who represent us to get the job done. We saw a record turnout in the election, and so President Biden has wins at his sail, but we saw a record turnout in all of the elections. And so everyone who's elected has a accountability to the people who put them in office. And so I encourage the American people, don't think that because the election is over that your work is done. You have to hold your elected officials accountable. And if you want to see relief, if you are worried about making ends meet and putting food on the table or being evicted from your home or having access to either health care or the vaccine, and that's a priority for you, let your representative know. And through that pressure, we are going to see action. And so you asked me, am I optimistic? I am. I really am. I think we've reached a crisis point. I think there were a lot of folks around our country who were simply stunned by what they saw with the storming of the Capitol a couple of weeks ago. And it's an opportunity for everybody to do some soul searching and say, is this who we want to be? If we want to be that beacon of hope of a democracy around the world, well, we better get our act together. And I'm confident that we will.
Valerie, I do want to get your thoughts on the pandemic and what is most critical, first task at hand in terms of the Biden administration. Is it the 100 million vaccines in 100 days? Is that realistic? Where should their focus be today?
Well, as we heard President Biden announce today, that the work he intends to do, both through executive order and through the $1.9 trillion relief package that he's encouraging Congress to move forward on, taken together, will make a difference. And it's the symbolism of saying the federal government is going to lead by example. If you are on federal property or interstate commerce, you must wear a mask because the president can do that by executive order. But that hopefully will encourage everybody else to do the same and follow his lead. And I have to say, I wish that had happened from day one. Wearing a mask should never become a political issue. It's a matter of science, and it works, and it could save lives. So let's all do it. So it's everything from that to saying, what is going to be the mechanism by which we turn vaccines into vaccinations? And what we heard from the president today is that the Trump administration really didn't leave them with a blueprint. And so his team, led by extraordinary people, and I know all of the leaders of the team, both in the White House and the cabinet, they are going to hit the ground running and figure out how to streamline this process, working with the states and the cities, not leaving them to their own resources, but helping streamline the process so that we can go from the production to getting those shots in the arm, which includes, as the president said today, using the Defense Authorization Act, where he can require private sector to produce everything from masks to syringes to gout to whatever we need. And that's been available all along, and he is not shying away from using that resource because of the urgency of the situation. When we are losing 4,000 people a day, over 400,000 lives lost, we need to know that the president has given this its maximum attention and put the best people on it, and he has done just that.
Where do you stand on impeachment in the Senate for President Trump? You have people on one side who say it is time to turn the page, move on. President Trump is now in Florida. Let's let that go. And you have others who say we need to hold the president accountable for what happened, certainly over the last 2 weeks.
Well, look, I think that accountability is one of the hallmarks of a democracy. We are a nation of laws. That's something the president used to always say. So we're actually a nation of laws, and someone has broken a law, then there have to be consequences, not just for the person, but for everybody else who follows in his footsteps. To stand in front of the White House and encourage your supporters to go down to the Capitol and try to overturn the outcome of the election when your attorney general has told you it was lawful, when the person in your Homeland Security who was responsible for security for infrastructure and technology has told you it was a lawful election, when every Secretary of State from both the Democratic and the Republican parties have certified the election, when the Electoral College has certified the election, when you have lost in court 50, 60 times, including 2 trips to the Supreme Court, where you appointed 3 of the members and they all ruled against you, then you have to say what should be the consequence of that behavior. People lost their lives that day. Not to mention rifling through offices, and thank goodness, due to the quick actions of people in law enforcement and members of Congress, we didn't have a worse consequence. It could have been a disaster. People were chanting, "Hang Vice President Pence." They were looking for Speaker Pelosi. They had ties that were prepared to put people in handcuffs. So I say all this to say the Senate, the impeachment has already taken place in the House. The Senate now has to have a trial. It's up to them to determine the timing of the trial. I saw earlier that Senator McConnell wanted to put it off until February. The timing isn't as relevant perhaps right now because the president is no longer in office. But I think having a trial and having a conclusion to that trial is important. I do think, again, the Senate has to multitask. It's important that President Biden have a cabinet confirmed as quickly as possible. It's important this COVID relief package go through as quickly as possible. He's sending legislation up for immigration reform. He has a big agenda. And so there's a lot to get done. But you know what? That's what our elected officials are paid to do. So I hope that the Senate responds accordingly.
Will an objective of accountability further fracture some of the divisiveness that we're seeing among Americans from coast to coast? And how do you reconcile that with people who are concerned that it will further divide?
Well, look, anytime you take action against somebody who has a following and a group of support, you run the risk of them being unhappy about that. Our courts are full of people who have family members who aren't happy when their loved ones are convicted. But that's what it means to be a nation of laws. And nobody is above the law, not even the president of the United States. And I think making that point clear is a part of the healing process. And I hope that any vote that is taken is bipartisan. I think that that would send a message to many of President Trump's supporters. And we've already seen signs that some of the Republicans are open to that because of the egregious nature of what has happened. And so I push back on the theory that you look the other way if there's been a violation of the law in the spirit of healing. I think you follow the law and to its natural conclusion, and that in fact is part of the healing process.
Finally, Valerie, given your relationship with both President Obama and now President Biden, do you think that Obama will be a person that Joe Biden turns to as an advisor over the course of his presidency? And also, do you believe that the former president would be willing to weigh in?
Well, this is what I have observed about former presidents. And I saw this when President Obama was in office. I remember so clearly after the earthquake in Haiti, calling President Clinton and President Bush and asking them if they would co-chair our relief effort, because we thought it was so important to send the message that this isn't about politics. In an instant, they said yes. And within a couple of days, they were at the White House, standing arm in arm with President Obama. That's what former presidents normally do. And you heard last night, and I thought one of the more touching moments of the conversation with the three former presidents was when they said, if you need us, we are here. We are here in any way that you want, because they took an oath that didn't just end with their presidency. It's a commitment to our country, as any citizen would be committed. And they just have an extra special club that they're all members of, and no one knows until you've been president what it's like to be president. And I think that certainly President Obama will be there if President Biden asks for his advice and counsel. But he also has a lot of confidence, having worked day in and day out with President Biden every day, that he is more than prepared for the challenges and opportunities that await him.
And civility, honesty, and also unity and compromise start at the top. So we are all hopeful that that continues to happen. Valerie, Jarrett, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.